Crematorium. Worker finds note in billionaire dress. 9 words that save her life. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Earl Dawson had seen plenty of strange things working at the Southbridge Crematorium, but nothing like this. On that quiet Wednesday morning, the sun was hot over Georgia, and the furnace room buzzed with its usual hum. Earl, a tall man in his 50s with tired eyes and a worn-out Atlanta Falcons cap, pushed a silver stretcher down the hallway. Lying on it was the body of Mrs. Eleanor Grant, a woman he'd heard about in passing. People used to say she was rich, important. Rumors floated around town that she'd once owned a fashion empire in New York before she suddenly retired and moved down south. But today, she was just another body, wrapped in a navy blue silk dress and ready for cremation. There were no flowers, no visitors, no signs of mourning. "Damn shame," Earl muttered, adjusting his gloves. "A lady like this, not even a single goodbye." Following protocol, Earl removed the metal handles from the simple pine coffin and checked the paperwork. Everything seemed in order, but as he was smoothing the dress over Eleanor's chest, his fingers brushed against something stiff inside the fabric, something that didn't belong. Curious, he reached in and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper, folded over and over until it was nearly torn through. His brow furrowed. "What the hell?" Earl carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Just 9 chilling words. "Please, do not cremate me. I'm still alive." His heart dropped. For a full second, the room felt frozen. The furnace hissed in the background, but Earl couldn't move. He looked down at Eleanor's face. Calm, pale, unmoving. He placed a trembling hand near her nose. Nothing. Then her neck. Still. But something in his gut said, "Stop." "Lord have mercy," he whispered. "Am I losing my mind?" Earl stepped back. His thoughts raced. What if it was a mistake? What if this was some sick prank? But what if it wasn't? He looked at the clock. The cremation was scheduled to start in 10 minutes. Earl made his decision. "Not today," he said out loud. "Not on my watch." He wheeled the stretcher out of the prep room and turned down the hall toward the inspection area. That's when the back door burst open with a loud crash. A teenage boy, sweating and wide-eyed, stumbled inside, yelling, "Please, please don't cremate her." "That's my mom." Earl nearly dropped the stretcher. "What in the... Boy, you trying to give me a heart attack?" The kid's voice cracked with desperation. "Her name's Eleanor Grant." "She's not dead. I'm the one who put the note in her dress." Earl stared. "You're the one who... Wait, what?" "She's not dead? She was poisoned by her own kids," the boy blurted. "They said she was gone, but she was breathing. I didn't know what else to do. I slipped the note in before they brought her here." He rushed to the stretcher and grabbed Eleanor's hand. "Please, wake up, Mom." Earl watched in disbelief as the boy's hands trembled. Then something happened. A small twitch, a movement in Eleanor's fingers. No. It couldn't be. Earl leaned closer, placed his fingers on her wrist. A heartbeat. Faint, but real. He stumbled backward, mouth agape. "Sweet Jesus!" Earl Dawson leaned against the wall, trying to steady his breath. He'd seen bodies stiff and cold, but this was something else. The woman on the stretcher was breathing. Barely, but breathing. The boy was still gripping her hand like his life depended on it. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, and his eyes were wild with fear. "What's your name, kid?" Earl asked, voice low but firm. Jaden Brooks." Earl nodded slowly, processing the moment. "You said she's your mom?" Jaden hesitated, then looked Earl dead in the eye. "Not by blood, but she saved me once. She fed me when I was hungry. Let me sleep behind her porch. She's the only person who's ever looked at me like I mattered. Earl's chest tightened. I found her at the house last night, Jaden continued. She was slumped over, barely breathing. Her son and daughter said she was just sick. They called the ambulance. But when I checked her, she was warm, still alive. Then this morning, I heard they declared her dead and were sending her here. So I followed the van, and when no one was watching, I slipped the note into her dress. Earl shook his head in disbelief, and nobody questioned it. Nobody double-checked? Jaden's lip quivered. They didn't care. They just wanted her gone. Just then, footsteps echoed from the far hallway. "Cremation room 2, ready to fire," a voice called out. "Earl, you good in there?" It was Ron, the floor supervisor. Earl acted fast. He threw a white sheet over Eleanor's body and turned to Jaden. "Help me move her." "Now." They pushed the stretcher into the inspection room and shut the door behind them. Earl reached for his walkie. "Yeah, Ron. Slight issue here," he said, trying to sound casual. "Looks like a gas valve's jammed again. I'm going to need a bit before we proceed." "Damn thing acts up every week," Ron grumbled. "Let me know if you need backup." Earl clicked off the radio and turned to Jaden. "Okay, kid. We don't have much time." Together, they wheeled Eleanor through the side exit into the narrow service alley behind the crematorium. The afternoon heat wrapped around them like a blanket. Jaden took off his hoodie and draped it over Eleanor's face. They moved quickly through the alley, past dumpsters, old storage sheds, and finally out onto the gravel path behind the building. A few kids were playing with a basketball down the road, but nobody seemed to notice. "Where can we take her?" Earl asked. "My place," Jaden said. "Well, it's not mine." "But I stay there sometimes. It's abandoned. Nobody comes around." They reached an old wooden shack behind a church. Inside, the air was musty but cool. A single mattress sat on the floor, surrounded by a few blankets, a plastic jug of water, and a tin of crackers. Earl laid Eleanor down gently. Jaden fetched water and dabbed her forehead. Minutes passed. Then, a soft sound. Eleanor groaned. Her eyes fluttered open, slow and uncertain, like someone waking from a decades-long sleep. Jaden knelt beside her, choking back tears. "You're okay. You're safe now." She blinked, looked around the room, then focused on his face. "Jaden?" He nodded, his voice shaking. "Yeah, it's me." "I didn't let them burn you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I knew. If anyone would come, it would be you." Earl sat back, stunned. He had no idea what he had just stepped into, but one thing was clear. This woman wasn't just some old lady. And this kid wasn't just some street rat. Something dark had happened. Something big. And now, the real story was just beginning. Eleanor Grant sat propped up on a stack of folded blankets, her breaths shallow, but growing stronger with each minute. The small shack was dimly lit by a crack in the wall, where sunlight filtered through. Dust floated in the air like ghosts of stories untold. Jaden sat close beside her, keeping her steady. Earl, leaning against the doorframe with arms crossed, watched silently. The weight of what he'd just witnessed still hadn't settled. "I thought I was dead," Eleanor whispered, her voice hoarse. "I felt myself slipping, fading." "But you held on," Jaden said gently. "You knew I'd find you." She gave a soft, weak smile. "I wasn't sure. I prayed. I didn't expect anyone." Earl stepped forward, squatting beside her. "Ma'am, I need to ask, what happened to you? Who did this?" Eleanor's eyes darkened. "My children," she said flatly. "Chloe and Derek. My own flesh and blood." Jaden's hands clenched into fists. "I built a life from scratch," Eleanor began. "Born in a trailer park in Mississippi, raised by a single mom who cleaned motels. I worked my way through college sewing dresses at night and answering phones during the day. She paused, her eyes glazed with memory. I started a boutique in New York, then a fashion line. Eventually, a company. People knew my name. Eleanor Grant meant something. But money changes people. She looked straight at Earl. When my husband passed, I handed the business to my kids, trusted them. I thought they'd carry it forward. Instead, they sold pieces off, laid off good people. Blew money on yachts and fake friends. Then last year, they started asking about the will. Jaden looked down, already knowing where this was going. I told them I was updating it. I wanted part of my estate to go to charity. And yes, I was planning to legally adopt Jaden. Earl blinked. You were really going to adopt this kid? Eleanor smiled weakly. He's more of a son to me than they ever were. She continued. 2 nights ago, I had tea before bed. Tasted bitter. Then I woke up dizzy. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I heard them talking. Laughing. Chloe said, she'll be gone by morning. Derek called the doctor. Paid him off to declare me dead. Jaden looked horrified. They poisoned you? They didn't even wait to hold a funeral, Eleanor said. Just packed me off to the crematorium like I was garbage. Earl rubbed his forehead. Jesus, this is insane. No, Eleanor said firmly. This is betrayal. The room went quiet for a long moment. Then Eleanor reached for Jaden's hand. You saved me, son, when I couldn't save myself. Jaden swallowed hard. You saved me first. Outside, a siren wailed far in the distance. Earl stood up. All right, this can't stay quiet. We need a plan, and fast. Eleanor's voice was weak, but filled with steel. No police. Not yet. Chloe and Derek think I'm dead. Let's keep it that way, for now. Jaden raised an eyebrow. You want to hide? No, she said with a cold fire in her eyes. I want to watch. I want to listen. And when the time is right? She looked at Earl. We burn them with the truth. For the next few days, the world believed Eleanor Grant was dead. Her obituary ran in the Southbridge Gazette. Chloe and Derek made no public statement, only a short, polished press release claiming their mother had passed peacefully in her sleep. Behind the scenes, they were already dividing her estate and arranging a private memorial to announce their control over the Grant fortune. But Eleanor was very much alive and quietly plotting. Hidden in an old brick house behind Ms. Beatrice's soul food diner, Eleanor rested while Earl and Jaden did the legwork. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. We can't go to the police without proof, Eleanor said, sipping weak tea from a chipped mug. Chloe and Derek are experts at lying with clean faces. I need them to expose themselves. Earl nodded. Then we give them the stage to do it. He pulled out a notebook and began sketching the layout of Eleanor's mansion. If we're going to catch him red-handed, we need eyes and ears in that house. Hidden cameras? Jaden asked. Exactly, and microphones too. Luckily, Earl had a friend, Chuck Romero, a former radio tech who now fixed vending machines for schools. Within 24 hours, Chuck supplied them with a basic surveillance kit, 6 button-sized cameras, 3 clip mics, and a motion-activated recorder. Jaden offered to deliver the gear. They won't suspect me, he said. They don't even remember my name. I'll pretend I'm dropping off fruit, or maybe lost my bike in their yard. I can sneak in through the back. Eleanor looked at him with pride. You've got more courage than men twice your age. The next morning, Jaden rode his busted-up bike up the hill to the Grant mansion. A gold Lexus sat in the driveway. The marble fountain was dry, weeds sprouting around the base. The house, once elegant and alive, now looked hollow, like the souls of those living in it. He wore a bright yellow delivery vest Earl had found at a thrift store. "Package from downtown market," he shouted through the gate. A housekeeper buzzed him in, barely looking. Inside, Jaden moved quickly. He slipped cameras under the hallway shelf, inside the den's flower vase, and behind the books in the office. He placed one microphone under the main dining table, exactly where Chloe and Derek held their secret wine-fueled conversations. By the time he left, the whole house was wired. Back at the hideout, Chuck set up the receiver. For 2 days, they listened. What they heard turned Eleanor's stomach. "Mom's gone, finally," Chloe said in one recording, laughing coldly. "All those lectures about legacy and ethics, what a joke. She really thought we were going to share this place with that street kid." Derek snorted. "I say we sell it. Strip it clean. Start fresh in LA. Oh, and remind me, we still need to close her accounts before the lawyers poke around." Jaden's fists clenched. Eleanor sat in silence, her face like stone. Then came the moment they'd been waiting for. "I'm telling you," Derek said one night, swirling bourbon in a glass, "if we'd waited any longer, she might have woken up." Chloe scoffed. "She wouldn't have. That stuff the doctor gave her knocked her right into God's waiting room." The room went silent. Then Chloe added, "Even if she did wake up, there's nothing left of her." "We burned the body, remember?" They both laughed. Jaden looked at Eleanor. "That's it." "That's what we needed." Eleanor didn't blink. "Good, because now it's our turn." Earl grinned from the corner. "So, what's the plan, boss?" Eleanor turned toward the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. "We're going to their little party," she said. "And this time, I'm bringing hell with me." The invitations went out the following week. Gold foil cards with fancy script. Celebration of legacy in loving memory of Eleanor Grant. Hosted by Chloe and Derek Grant. Location, the Grant Estate Ballroom. They called it a celebration of life, but everyone in town knew what it really was, a chance for Chloe and Derek to show off their new wealth and status. The mansion was polished like a trophy. Expensive wine flowed. Local politicians, media faces, and high society folks filled the marble hall, offering fake condolences and taking selfies in front of Eleanor's portrait. Chloe wore a designer black gown with dramatic shoulders. Derek had on a navy blue suit and a champagne flute glued to his hand. They smiled, posed, laughed. Their mother was barely in the ground, and already they were kings of the hill. What they didn't know was, their mother wasn't in the ground at all. Outside, in a black car parked near the gate, Eleanor Grant adjusted her scarf. Her blue silk dress shimmered under the low lights. Jaden sat beside her, clutching a small USB drive. Earl stood by the back door of the ballroom, holding a walkie-talkie and pretending to be part of the event staff. "You sure about this?" Earl asked through the mic. Eleanor nodded, her voice calm. "More than I've ever been about anything." Jaden helped her out of the car, and together they walked to the entrance. A moment later, the ballroom doors burst open. The music stopped. Gasps filled the air. Eleanor Grant stood in the doorway. Alive, breathing, unapologetic. Whispers flew like wildfire. "Is that her? She's supposed to be dead. She looks incredible." Chloe's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Derek coughed violently on a grape he'd just popped in his mouth. Eleanor took 3 calm steps forward. "Good evening," she said, voice clear and steady. "I see you've been quite busy, celebrating my death." The crowd parted like the Red Sea as she walked forward. Jaden followed, clutching the flash drive. "I was poisoned," Eleanor continued, "and left to burn. But the truth didn't die with me. It survived. In him." She gestured to Jaden, who climbed onto a small wooden stool in the center of the ballroom. With trembling hands, but eyes full of fire, he plugged the USB into a laptop, already connected to the projector. Earl gave a signal. The white curtain behind the stage lit up. Then the video played. Everything, every word Chloe and Derek said in private, boomed through the speakers. She's gone, finally. Close her accounts. That stuff knocked her right into God's waiting room. We burned the body, remember? The room fell into stunned silence. Someone gasped. A reporter dropped his phone. The local pastor made the sign of the cross and quietly walked out. Eleanor stood tall, her eyes locked on her children. "You tried to erase me for money," she said, "but you forgot something important. I made this life. Every brick in this house, every dollar in those accounts, I built it." Chloe took a step forward, her voice breaking. This isn't what it looks like." "Don't," Eleanor cut her off. "Don't insult me with more lies." Derek stammered. You can't just show up and ruin our lives like this." Eleanor's voice turned icy. "You already ruined yours." "I'm just turning on the lights." Suddenly, police officers entered through the front door. Earl had tipped them off with copies of the recordings sent ahead of time. "Chloe and Derek Grant," the lead officer announced. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Chloe tried to run toward the kitchen but slipped on the wet marble. Derek shouted something about a setup, but no one listened. They were cuffed and escorted out to the flashing lights outside. As they disappeared into the night, Eleanor turned to her guests. "I apologize for the disruption," she said with a faint smile, "but sometimes, before a house can be cleaned, the garbage has to be taken out." The room erupted in quiet gasps, and then applause. She didn't cry. Not tonight. Because this wasn't just a return. It was a rebirth. The police cruiser carrying Chloe and Derek Grant disappeared into the night, sirens echoing off the gated walls of the mansion they once called home. Inside, the ballroom was frozen in stunned silence. The grand chandelier flickered above, casting shadows across the polished floors. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector still running. Eleanor Grant stood at the center like a queen risen from the ashes. Her eyes swept the crowd. "You may leave," she said softly. "Tonight's celebration is over." One by one, guests gathered their purses, muttered awkward goodbyes, and exited with downcast eyes. No one dared meet her gaze. Not after what they'd seen, all except Jaden and Earl, who remained at her side. Jaden looked up at her. "You did it." "No," Eleanor said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We did it." By morning, news of what had happened spread like wildfire. Socialites arrested for attempted murder of billionaire mother. From cremation to confrontation, Eleanor Grant returns from the dead. Teen orphan helps save heiress. She's my real mom. Local and national networks picked it up. Eleanor declined all interview requests, choosing instead to rebuild quietly, on her terms. The mansion, now empty of snakes, became filled with light again. Eleanor took legal action to reclaim full control of her estate. With overwhelming evidence and public support, the judge ruled in her favor. The forged death certificate was nullified. All assets were returned. And in a private, emotional court session, Jaden Brooks was legally adopted as her son. When the judge read out, "You are now recognized as mother and son under the law," Eleanor smiled with tears in her eyes. Jaden cried and hugged her so tightly, the whole courtroom clapped. Later that week, Eleanor hosted a very different kind of gathering. No champagne, no cameras. Just neighbors, local teens, teachers, and Earl. She stood in front of her old fabric shop downtown, freshly repainted, with a new sign above the door, the Eleanor Grant Foundation, for second chances. The foundation would offer housing, scholarships, and mentorship for underprivileged youth, starting with Jaden, now a full-time student with straight A's. Earl was offered a new role as property manager, and he accepted with pride. "Never thought I'd go from a crematorium to this," he said, shaking his head. But hey, life's funny like that. Jaden now walked tall in the town that used to ignore him. And every time someone asked, "How'd a kid like you end up with all that?" he answered with a grin, "I didn't get lucky. I got loved right." Meanwhile, Chloe and Derek sat in county jail awaiting trial. Their lawyers fought to reduce the charges, but with audio recordings, forged documents, and public outrage, their future looked grim. From inside her office, Eleanor received a letter signed by both of them. No apology, no regret, just a request. "Please don't speak against us in court." She didn't reply. Some things don't deserve words. That night, Eleanor stood on her porch watching the sunset with a mug of mint tea in hand. Jaden came out barefoot, munching on peanut butter toast. "Mom?" She turned, smiling. "Yeah, baby?" He sat beside her on the bench. "Do you ever regret saving me that day?" She looked at him, her eyes soft. "No," she whispered. "You saved me first." They sat in silence, listening to the crickets sing, for the first time in a long time. Peace. Years passed, like pages turning in a well-worn book. The name Eleanor Grant no longer echoed in courtroom scandals or society gossip columns, but in classrooms, community centers, and soup kitchens bearing her initials. Her foundation had grown. Dozens of kids who once slept in alleys and abandoned buildings now studied under roofs she'd helped raise. Some called her Auntie Ellie, others called her Mom, but only one called her that and truly meant it: Jaden Brooks Grant. Now 17, Jaden wore a borrowed suit 2 sizes too big, his tie crooked, and his smile glowing as he stood at the front of a small-town community center auditorium. High school valedictorian. His voice trembled as he looked out into the crowd. "I used to believe I didn't belong anywhere, that my story started and ended in the street, but one woman changed that." He looked at Eleanor sitting in the front row, beaming in a blue scarf and her signature pearl earrings. "She showed me that love isn't about blood. It's about choosing someone and standing by that choice." The crowd clapped. Eleanor dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Earl patted her shoulder from the seat beside her. Life had come full circle. Months later, Jaden left for college on a full scholarship funded by the very foundation he now helped lead. Eleanor, now in her early 90s, stayed behind in Southbridge. She still hosted weekend pancake mornings, told long stories about her days in New York, and laughed with Earl, who had long since moved in. Not just as a companion, but as family. They never officially married. But they never needed to. "My name's still Grant," Eleanor used to say with a grin, "but my heart's been Dawson for a while now." On her 95th birthday, neighbors threw her a party. Balloons, fried chicken, gospel music, and laughter filled the air. She blew out her candles, hugged every child twice, and whispered blessings like secrets only they could understand. A few weeks later, Eleanor asked to be taken to her favorite spot, a hammock under the old magnolia tree behind the house. "I just want to listen to the leaves," she said. That evening, as the sun melted behind the trees, she drifted off, peacefully, without pain, without fear. Her hands were folded, her smile gentle. Jaden had just called to say, "I love you," that morning. She left on her own terms, the way she lived. At her memorial, the town gathered not to mourn, but to celebrate. Not in a ballroom, but in the very community center she built. Jaden stood before them, not as an orphan, not as a charity case, but as a man, a leader, and her son. He cleared his throat and spoke with conviction. "Mom taught me that family is not about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and standing for what's right, even when it hurts." He held up a small folded note, the original one he had slipped into her dress all those years ago. These 9 words saved her life, but her love saved mine." The crowd was silent. Then, one by one, they stood in applause. Later that evening, Jaden placed Eleanor's ashes in a marble urn and set it on the mantel beside a framed photo. One of her laughing in the garden, holding a basket of peaches, Earl waving in the background. He whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." And in the breeze that passed through the open window, stirring the curtains just slightly, he felt her answer. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Would you risk everything for someone you love? Rate this story from 1 to 10. Hit that like, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles begin with a whisper and 9 simple words.